Hello, this is Belinda Colleen back with another video, and today I'd like to talk about 5 ways to prevent reseller burnout. It's so easy when you first start with something new to be excited and keep your levels of commitment high when you're 30 days in, even 60 days in, but somewhere around the 3 or 4 month mark, you're going to start questioning things. You may start getting bored with some of the more mundane, basic things you have to do in order to run a reseller business. So, and I know that's been a challenge for me, and most people I know, I can tell when they're getting burned out because they start complaining. And we've all done that many times, I'm sure. But there are some tried and true ways that I've used that have really helped me a lot. And so that when I get up in the morning, I'm excited, and no matter what happened overnight, whether I got a refund overnight, whether my cat sat in my new laundry and got fur all over it, all kinds of things, weird things that happen, and you just get burned out sometimes, and you think, oh, I can't take another hassle today. Okay, number 1, plan a sourcing trip to a fun spot. Okay, that is one of my favorite things. When I first started off, I was just high on life, high on the whole idea of reselling. I just thought it was a big adventure, and I just couldn't believe how happy I was about it. And then about 3 or 4 months in, I started getting bored going to the same spots. I wanted something new. I needed an adventure, something outside of reselling. But then I found something wonderful. You can combine a trip to a favorite spot with reselling. And there's all kind of good reasons to do that. Talk to the tax man about it, because I'm no tax expert, but you can write off a lot of your expenses for a little trip, whether it's even a day trip or an overnight trip, and pick a spot that you want to go to, that you'd like to experience, and do a little shopping when you're there. You know, we can all nowadays, with the way things are online, you can do research and find so many fun places to go. I went to Greenville, South Carolina, which was about a 2-hour drive from where I lived at the time in Athens, Georgia. And it's a great spot. We had a wonderful lunch. First we went to the bins. And that was my first experience going to the bins, so that was a little bit of an adventure. Not my favorite place, but I learned about it. I'd always been curious about it, and it was interesting. But then we went and had a great lunch right in the downtown area of Greenville, which is very, very nice. And we walked the town and looked around and had a real fun time. And I happened to be with someone that was also reselling, so we went together. We enjoyed ourselves. You know, even though it was a 2-hour trip there and back, being so 4-hour round trip, we had fun. We did it together. We had a good time, and it ended up being a profitable trip. You know, we took that, I think I spent like, oh gosh, $60 or $70 for 50 pounds of clothes. It was an insane amount of stuff that we got there, and processing it was a huge effort when we got back, but it was fun. And I think if you can do that while you're sourcing, just pick some fun spots that you would go to anyway, maybe to have a nice lunch and be in a different location. We all get a little bit of excitement out of going to new places, or at least I do. And a lot of times I don't want to spend the night necessarily. Depends. Of course, that's completely on the table too, if you want to do that. I think because I have pets and stuff, it's a little bit trickier. And then you have to weigh in the expense of having your pets taken care of and all that. But I had a good time. And I guess my point is, that's one of the greatest things you could do for yourself, is to combine work with pleasure and take a sourcing trip to a place that you enjoy, to get, just to mix it up a little bit and have some fun, something to look forward to. Maybe take a friend with you. They can be a reseller or not. A lot of times, if they're not a reseller, you can meet, you can go to the bins or go to a few thrift stores and then meet up later for lunch. There's all kinds of ways you can do it. So that is the number 1 thing I would suggest that you do to keep you from being burned out. When you're starting to get a little sour on the business, or you're just needing a little adventure or something fun to do, that's a great way to serve two purposes. Another thing that is helpful is to network with other resellers. I mean, sometimes when you talk to your friends that are not in reselling, they really can't relate to what you're talking about. You know, when you bring up different issues, and they're not really, let's face it, they may not be that interested because they don't really understand what you're doing and they don't get it, you know. So I've found that in any way that I can, talking and being around other resellers helps me. It inspires me. And if you don't know very many resellers, you can always go online or on YouTube and talk to resellers. There are all kind of online groups that you can join. And, you know, local groups too. There are local groups that you can join, and you just meet people while you're outsourcing. I know I have a friend that's a gentleman that is a reseller. He kind of is more of a middleman, really. He buys things at the same places I do, and then he sells them to antique stores. So he's more like a wholesaler, and he knows a lot about antiques. And he has been doing this forever. Long before I did it, he was doing it. And I remember thinking at the time, that seems kind of like fun. He seems to really enjoy himself. And he was a great networker. He knew a lot of people all over town. And this is when I was living in Atlanta. And he seemed to really have a good time with it. So there are so many people involved in reselling at different levels. There's wholesalers. There's people doing it like we're doing it. There are estate salespeople. And the more of these people you know, the better your chances are of finding a comrade, someone that really understands what you're doing. And there's a lot of good friendships to be made there. There's also educational groups. I know a lot of YouTubers have educational groups, and they do calls with each other, and you know, they basically help each other with some of their, you know, some of the challenges of reselling. We all need help sometimes. We all need advice. And sometimes we just need someone to, you know, listen. Let's face it, sometimes we just need to vent and we need someone to listen. So don't be afraid of getting, you know, making an effort to make contacts. In fact, you may want to get some business cards made up. I know people don't use business cards as much as they used to 20 years ago. But when you're out in a physical, logistical kind of way, and you're out in the world, sometimes it's easier than writing your name on a piece of paper just to hand out a business card in order to forge new relationships. So I think that's the second best thing you can do to prevent burnout. It's just, you've got to find people, like-minded people that have similar interests, and that will keep you from getting too lonely in this and feeling like you're out there fighting all your battles by yourself without any encouragement or just people that can relate. Okay. Third thing is to take some of the mundane tasks that you have to do as a reseller and make them fun. Make them fun again. I know sometimes I don't like listing. It's like, oh, I've got a list. And I'm a kind of a morning person. Well, I love the night, but I don't want to work at night. But I love to get all of the hard things done in the morning. And one of the mistakes I make sometimes is in the morning I try to do too many things, and then I end up listing at 10 o'clock at night. Anyway, I have learned that I have got to make listing fun, or I'm not going to want to do it, or I'm not going to enjoy it. And one of the ways I've made listing fun is I try to make it into a party. It's like, okay, it's a party, turning on some great music. I'm going to dance a little bit. I'm going to list a little bit. I'm going to take pictures. I'm going to play with my cat. You know, while I'm doing it, I'm going to turn this into a party. And I've even heard some people have listing parties and they do it online with each other. Sounds weird. I know everything's going online, but I do think you've got to take those mundane tasks so that and make them more fun. And it's on you to do that. I'm not saying you're going to do it every time, but maybe sometime you say, you know, I'm going to turn this into a party and I'm going to list 20 items, which would be a lot for me because I never list 20 items at one time. I don't think I ever have. I think the most I've ever listed at one time was maybe 15. But see, I'm a part-time reseller, so I'm in a little different boat. I know full-time resellers, they list 20, 30, 50 items a day. Don't know how they do it. But I'm sure that they have more manpower than just themselves if they're doing that, or something going on to make it work for them. So you do have to. You've got to take the mundane aspects and make it more fun. Sometimes I have YouTube on in the background. You know, one of my more fun YouTube people that I really enjoy watching, and I'll listen to them just to get some, you know, to get encouragement and to hear what they have to say, and not to feel like I'm all by myself listening. There are a lot of ways. It's really just kind of a mental psych out, and you've got to get good at that, at being your own inspiration at times, and knowing how to do things to enjoy yourself. I know music really helps with me a lot. If I turn on some great music, it elevates my mood, no matter what I'm doing. So if I'm listening, it even elevates my mood when I'm listening. So there's one possibility, one option you can try. And I can't say this enough, and I don't mean to sound preachy. When I'm talking on YouTube, I'm really talking to myself to remind myself of all these things. And one of them is to surround yourself with supportive people. And I know that's kind of like the last one, networking, but I mean in general too, not just people that are all about your business, but also people in general. You know, we all come in contact with people that are kind of the naysayers. You know, they're the ones, you know, the glass is always half empty for them. And anything you say, they're going to poke a hole in it. And honestly, you just have to stay away from people like that, or you'll just never be happy. You'll never feel satisfied with yourself. And while we, you know, as we get older and smarter and wiser, but mostly older, we've had so many experiences that we realize that we have to limit our time with people like that, because honestly, they just don't have any joy in their life typically. So they really don't want to see. They just don't get it. They don't get you. If you're excited about your business and they aren't excited about anything, they're not going to understand your excitement, and they're going to take shots at it, you know. Well, where do you put all that stuff? Gosh, doesn't it clutter up your home? I mean, how can you really make any money doing that? I mean, what do you make, a couple of bucks every time you sell something? It just doesn't seem worth the effort. These are some of the things I've heard from some of the naysayers, you know, that I've told what I'm doing. And so I just don't talk about it that much, you know. And I try to keep those people out of my life altogether, but let's face it, you're going to run into some people like that, whether you like it or not. And sometimes they could be old friends, they could be neighbors. One of my neighbors, in fact, you know, we were walking to the car, and she said something about, well, why do you, I see you taking all these boxes in and out. What are you doing? She goes, you moved in a while ago. I said, oh, I know. I said, I'm selling on eBay. And she looked at me with kind of that stink face, and she said, really? She goes, how can you make any money doing that? That's exactly how she said it. And I thought, whoa. And I said, well, you'd be surprised. And I put a big smile on my face, and I thought, that's it, you know. She's a new neighbor of mine, but guess what? She's not really going to be part of my inner circle anymore, because she's got such a negative attitude. And so, you know, you have to earn the right to be in my world these days. And I think that, again, don't mean to be preachy. I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you, because I fall off of my own advice sometimes, and I have to remind myself, okay, remember, you know, you have to be selective about the people who get to be in your life and influence you. So that is a fourth thing that I would say to really, really look at as you are building your business and doing anything in life, really. The fifth thing that I'll mention is you really need to set realistic goals. If you don't set realistic goals, you're going to always come up short. And while I've heard, so many people talk about goal setting in my life, I was in marketing and sales for a long time. And when you're in marketing and sales, you get a lot of advice about goal setting. Oh, it's all about goals. And honestly, there is value in goal setting, I think. But you've got to know which things to focus on. When I first started doing this, I was setting listing goals, and it helped me in some ways, but it hindered me in other ways. For instance, I would set a listing goal and say, I'm going to list 7 things a day. Okay. Well, guess what happens when you have a hard goal about listing? Then that means if you can't find enough high quality items, then you're going to list some stuff you shouldn't list because you're hanging on to that 7 items a day. Instead of maybe I'm going to list as many high quality things a day as I can. And I'd like maybe 7 is my goal, but maybe I only find 4 quality things to list that day. Then that's all I should list is 4. Or maybe I go out one day and I don't have anything to list and I'm going out specifically to find some things to list for the next 2 or 3 days. And I have one of those days, we all have them, where you go out and you can't find much. You just can't. You find maybe a couple of things and you think, wow, is this it? So you go home, and what I used to do, which was crazy, is I'd start looking around the house. I think, well, I don't need this anymore. I think I'll list this, or I don't need this anymore. I was trying so hard to list 7 things a day that I was, forgetting about how I didn't want to build an inventory, full of junk, or not junk, but low demand items that nobody really wanted. And so then I'd end up having to store those things. So be careful about what your goal is tied to. And I've heard a lot of people, they have listing goals. And maybe the listing goal should be, I'm going to list every day. And maybe sometimes, if you can't find much, maybe you relist some of your old items and you redo them so that they rank higher again because they've been relisted. You end the listing and then you relist it with maybe better pictures or better keywords, because the longer you're in the business, the more you know, and the better, the more capable you are of putting up a great listing. So go back and revisit some of those listings from months ago that haven't sold and try to relist those if they were quality items. So I think you have to be careful with the goals that you set. And you also have to be careful not to feel bad about the fact that you're not going to meet all your goals. Goals are something to aspire to. And I'm not saying throw them out the window. I'm saying be realistic about them and make sure you're making the right goals. I mean, for me, the right goal is to aspire to so many sales. And how can I get there? And how many listings about do I need? And what is the high quality listing that's most likely to lead to a sale? So maybe my goal is I don't buy anything that doesn't have a sell-through rate of at least 50%. That's the goal. That's a good goal to have. And if you can hang on to that goal, you'll be able to achieve success. So set goals, but make sure you're not being too hard on yourself. It's just so important to set the right goals. And not to beat the drum too hard, but setting listing goals and a set number, if you're not tying it to quality and sell-through rate, is worthless. If you list 10 iffy items every day, you're not going to build your business. You're just going to build your storage, and you're going to burst out of your house. Because they're not going to turn and they're not going to sell. Believe me, I'm speaking from experience, especially from the first few months that I was doing this. But I will stop talking about goals now. The last thing is a silly thing, but it's important. You need to learn to laugh at yourself. I mean, sometimes you have a choice when something goes wrong. You're either going to laugh or you're going to cry. And unfortunately, sometimes I can cry too easily. So I've got to learn how to laugh at myself, because I've done some pretty stupid things that are pretty funny and they're very laughable if I can get myself in the right frame of mind. And that usually means not take myself so seriously. That's always gets me in trouble when I take myself too seriously. So just learn to laugh at yourself. You're going to do some crazy stuff. I mean, I almost mailed an item one day without any postage on it. I got up to the bin and started to throw it in, and I thought, where's the postage? I had a item with no postage. How that happened, I do not know, but it happened. So I kind of laughed about it and thought, thank goodness I did not put that in the bin. That would have been a big disaster and a big mystery for everybody, including me and my customer, and even the post office would have probably loved that one. So learn to laugh at yourself. Don't take any of it too seriously, because it's supposed to be fun and profitable, and it can be both as long as you keep your perspective on things. And just remember that we're doing this to improve our life, not to be, hard on ourselves, but to improve our life and just make it more fun. Anyway, happy holidays. Until next time, I hope you have a lot of fun out there listing and growing your business. Goodbye.